watching this, whether it is now or on a video later on. This is actually a creepypasta that I myself wrote because my friends wanted to be in a creepypasta, and I am a decent writer. So, this is that story I had written. It is up on Reddit in r/nosleep under the name There's a Lady in Red and I've Played Her Game. Or on r/creepypasta under the title Lady in Red. Same story, different title for reasons. Have you ever heard of the Lady in Red? I mean, it's only a folk tale, but many say it isn't. I myself know it's only a legend, but my friends think otherwise. Eventually, I got tired of arguing with them and decided to settle this once and for all. So when we were all in town for a sleepover, we decided to play her game. Back in the few months before I started high school, I happened to get back in touch with some of my old friends from grade school. It had been years since I'd heard from them, and since I didn't have any other friends, I'd spend most of my time talking to them. The one who started all this was named Landon. We had a lot in common. We played video games, liked the same movies, and most importantly, we were into urban legends and scary stories. I never believed any of them, but he thought that there might be some truth to them. He wanted to try one of those games he'd heard of online, out for himself. In order to play, first you need a big building or space with lots of hiding spots, like an abandoned office building or mall. Next, you need a group of 5 people. It must be exactly 5 people. No more and no less. Thirdly, each player needs a candle, matches, some form of food, and something from their childhood. Lastly, you can't speak during the game. You can't eat or drink, and you must not, under any circumstances, leave the building or quit during the game. Lucky for us, there was a mall not too far away that has been almost entirely abandoned, and part of it fits the criteria. There was a problem, though. There were only 4 of us: me, Landon, Seth, and Michael, our other friends. As the 4 of us are sitting there, trying to think of who to bring, Landon's older sister, Maddie, walks into the room. She really doesn't like this kind of stuff, but after some pleading, we finally convince her to come along. As for the candles and matches, I have lots of them at home, so we decide to swing by my house before we go. For the last 2, we all decide to bring our own. Now that our minds are made up, tomorrow night is when we decide to meet up to do it. I was the first one to wake up, so I ran home and got the candles and matches, along with some crackers I had for food, and a small blue bunny doll I had when I was little. I also brought my camera to catch the look on their faces when it doesn't work. I hurried back before everyone woke up and waited at the kitchen table, diagramming the story thus far. As to tell other believers it was fake and nothing happened. An hour or so passes before they all finally wake up and get ready to go. I go over the preparation rules once more, and everyone brings me their food and childhood item to put in my bag with everything else. We were going to head over early to check out the place and make sure it was still there. It was around 5 p.m. when we finally got there. The building looked forgotten as ever, but there were other ones built about it. Then you have this sorry piece of concrete older than time. I used to come here a lot when I was really little, back in the early 2010s, but this place was bustling with life back then. There were dozens of stores and everything was always packed with people. But that was a long time ago, and the building is almost abandoned, except for a bookstore and a restaurant or 2. After making our way through the almost empty halls, we came to a big set of glass doors. Beyond these doors were the remnants of a high-end clothes store that shut down a long time ago. It was 3 floors tall and had tons of walls and shelves. This place looked perfect for their dumb little game. Around 9 p.m., we decided to get this started. We cleaned an area on the floor, and I asked how to play, hoping someone knew. And of course, Landon knew the rules. Great. He was the one into it the most. So I guess the game looks pretty easy to set up. All you have to do is put the 5 toys in a circle, then place their food in front of it. Then each person puts a candle by their toy and lights it, then holds the other one unlit. You then light your candle with the one lit by your toy and walk up as high and as far away from the candles as you can. One person stands at each corner of the building and hides while the 5th person stands in the middle of the toy ring. Okay, I guess that sounds simple enough. I really have no idea what happens next, but I think the person in the middle of the ring is called the sheep, and the rest of the people have to try and hide from them, but they can't stay in the same place for more than 5 minutes. They also need to keep their candles lit. If it goes out, the person has 13 minutes to get it relit from another candle, or they lose. All you've got to do is stay alive, basically. Okay, everyone, just to recap. Put your toy, first candle, and food in the circle. Light your first candle. Then, use your lit candle to light the other one. One person stays in the circle while the other 4 hide in the corners. No talking, eating, drinking, or leaving the game prematurely. Keep your candles lit and only stay in one spot for less than 5 minutes. You sure you're not making some of this up? I mean, really. Seems a bit ridiculous. The game starts at midnight and ends at sunrise. In order to win the game, you need to get back to the circle and extinguish the candles you've been holding. Then you can leave the building safely. Okay, it's starting to be about midnight, so we're starting the game. We arrange our things in a circle and get ready to light our candles. We decide the one who should be in the circle is Michael, because he's probably the most scared of the game, and if it's fake, he'd feel better about it. We decide that if nothing happens in 5 minutes of starting the game, we'd all meet back by the circle. We all get ready and count it down. 3, 2, 1, go! We all lit our candles and got down to our corners. We waited about 5 minutes, and I decided to call it a day, because of course, it's fake. Now they'll finally get it. I headed back to the circle, only to find everything was gone, except a thin, black circle on the ground where the candles had been. No sign of Michael anywhere either, which was very strange. I headed off to go look for everyone when I turned around and saw a faint glow coming from the other aisle. I rushed over hoping to find one of my friends, hopefully Michael, but instead I saw something else. She was pale, very pale. She had long, unkempt black hair. She was wearing a long gown of something that looked like it was made of bloodied human flesh. In her chest was a hole filled with candlelight. I didn't want to believe it, but standing right in front of me was the lady in red. I quietly backed up and ran the other way before she saw me, eventually ducking around some shelves. I needed to find everyone else. I ran back upstairs to where I had been at the beginning of the game. I'd followed the wall to my left until I found someone. That someone just happened to be Seth. He tried to say something, but I shushed him and gave him my notebook to write what he'd been trying to tell me, because you can't talk. That was one of the rules. He then wrote, "Where's everyone? I've been looking for an hour, and I went to go check on Michael like we said we would, and he was gone." I know, 'cause I went too. He was gone then also, but I didn't find the lady in red. But I did find the lady in red. She's real. She's not just another urban legend like we thought. And I think she killed Michael. Her dress looked like it was made out of blood and flesh. Why did we ever think this was a good idea? Now that is a question I keep asking myself. We decide on looking for everyone else in the meantime. I keep going left, and he'll go right, and hopefully we'll meet in the middle. I went on my way, and it didn't take that long to run into Maddie, who was walking around in an area of the store that was still, for some reason, full of furniture. It must have been a break room of sorts. I quickly showed her Seth and I's conversation from earlier, and she agreed to follow me. So she grabbed her candle, and we went searching for her brother, who's the only person I haven't seen. We kept going when I tripped on something, which made me drop everything I was holding. I got all my things back together and went to go see what had tripped me. To my horror, it was the same spindly black hairs that belonged to the lady. They were everywhere, on the walls, floors, and ceilings, all of it spiderwebbing out of the center of the building. It was amazing, since even though I'd been paying attention to my surroundings, I hadn't seen any of this, since the hair was so thin it was almost invisible, like thread. I followed some of the lines with my fingers, tracing them to try and get the message across to Maddie that there was something there. But she couldn't see it. I mean, it was like 2 a.m. and pitch black. The only light was from our 2 dim candles. It didn't really matter all that much, so I shrugged and we kept searching. We stopped to take a break after walking for what seemed like forever, and we'd heard a loud thud, almost like something big was knocked over. We pretty much guessed who it was. I mean, it could only be 2 people at this point. So we followed the long, empty aisle shelves until we found something that we thought, and this is where we thought the noise came from. What we found was a dark mass of the hair that seemed to be pulsing with black goo oozing out from the cracks of this 6-foot-tall pod. Horrified, I stumbled backwards into something. No, not something. Someone. I scrambled to my feet to see who I'd found, and finally, after 3 hours of searching, we found Landon. After seeing it was him, Maddie stopped hiding behind a shelf and came over to see what we were going to talk about. I showed him my note, and he explained he already knew because he ran into Seth earlier. Speaking of Seth, where is he? We all looked at each other and realized now we'd have to go find him. We set out to the middle of the store, which had a balcony hanging over the first floor where we started the game. Now the only exits in the building were connected to the center of the first floor, which is where the circle was. The doors were all glass and took up most of the northmost wall. This allowed the room to be bathed in a pale white moonlight which illuminated the rooms enough to see a shadowy figure coming toward us. Then, a blood-curdling scream split the darkness as the lady sprinted at us, almost gracefully, her steps not making a single sound. We looked at each other, then zigzagged through this maze of boxes and shelves until we thought we'd gone far enough. But another shadow moved towards us. As we prepared for the worst, it walked closer into my field of view, and to our relief, it was Seth. We all sat down because we'd been moving around this building for 5 hours now. When I noticed something was wrong, it was dim for there being 4 candles. I looked around. Maddie's candle was missing. She must have lost it when we were running. She has a look on her face like she's already come to terms with this. There isn't much I can do. The time's almost up. If I counted right, it should be almost 13 minutes exactly. Right on cue, she starts choking and coughing. When they check on her, she's laying in a puddle of the same black ooze from earlier. Then, from the ground and the walls, the hair shoots out like knives, ripping her apart. Landon ran towards the circle of candles in a blind rage. I don't think I'd be able to keep up with him. Seth covers his face and starts shaking violently and shouts out, "No, this is too far. First Michael, now Maddie. I quit!" He started for the exit and I ran behind him trying to stop him. He eventually got to the doors, flinging one open, and he finds an open void where the outside ground should be. The hair shoots out and drags him down into the darkness, leaving me entirely alone again. It's been 6 hours, 30 minutes until sunrise. I can do this. I should just walk around to try and get my mind off everything. 5 minutes. I'm going to head to the circle now. I shouldn't be too far away. As I get closer, the hair gets thicker and drips with more of the black ooze. 1 minute. I'm standing there getting ready to end this game when behind me I hear a scraping noise. I turn to see what it is, and no surprise, it's the lady. Behind her looks to be Landon running. He jumps at her, grabbing a knife from his pocket and stabbing it into her eye. He grabs her throat, but her hair shot out and wrapped around his neck and limbs. Her hair thin, but sharp as razors cutting into his neck. She tears off his arm and then takes a step closer. She smiles, the eye he gouged out showing a hollow space only disturbed by the pinprick of candlelight showing from her skull, before decapitating him and flinging his lifeless body to the ground beside her. She stares at me before taking one slow step in my direction, then another. I finally come to my senses and start running for the circle. Just as I made it, she does too. I quickly throw my candle down, and the room explodes in flame that burns blue. But I must have passed out, because when I came to, I was laying on the floor, and there was no sign of anyone. The sun was still coming up, so everything had a slight orange hue. I step outside through the door that Seth was pulled out of. This time the ground was concrete, slightly overrun by weeds. I walk through the parking lot and turn to take one last look at the building before I leave. A chill runs through me as I see the lady in red. But she's not alone. Standing next to her, 4 figures, skinless and mangled, waving from the window. It's been years since this happened. I've never forgotten what happened that night. Everyone thinks they disappeared. But no, I've come to the realization about some things about the game. Like how Landon made up most of the rules, and why the person in the circle's called sheep. It's because the lady, she is a wolf in sheep clothing, meaning she was probably wearing poor skin from the thing. Gone past that building again, because around a year later it was torn down to make space for a new office building. I've gotten on with my life, and eventually everything was somewhat normal again. I actually have a younger sister who just started high school, which she is about the age I was when I decided to play the game. She came home from school today and asked, "Have you ever heard a story called The Lady in Red?"